always do good work, because you never know when people are going to come
I
back
trust
around.
things that they are going to work out. How even if you're disappointed, normally something better comes along, or the situation explains
So
itself.
spoiler to all of our listeners, you now run your own
Hello,
company.
grown-ups.
Welcome to Series 3 of the Beginner's Guide to Being a Grown-Up. We are kicking off the season with Lucy Greenleaf, founder of the Leaf Group and co-founder of Ecomm Girls Club. Learn about her journey from leaving the UK at 23 and the pressure she felt to achieve, to pivoting out of corporate life and starting her own business, and also what she's learned from being a digital nomad. Lucy, welcome and thank you for joining us today. So I'm going to kick off straight away with the first question, which is, tell us a little bit about your journey into adulthood.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. This is such a fun Friday activity. I was just saying to Sam before we recorded, I love to talk, so I'm happy to be here. I don't quite feel like an adult, to be honest, still. But I think probably for me, like, adulthood is when I went to university in the UK, which I was very much like, when I was younger, did everything kind of by the book. Like, I didn't really consider there were other options as far as I was aware in like my sphere with like everyone around me. I was like relatively smart, so aim for a top 10 uni and you go to it and you get a degree and then you get a corporate job. So I didn't really think about like what I wanted to do or be as an adult for a long time. I feel like now looking back, I was just like ticking boxes because I thought that's what you had to do. But yeah, I did 3 years at Exeter and was very much on the kind of, and then I went traveling for a little bit, but I very much was like, I'm going to work in a bank and buy a flat in London and I just kind of had a tick list in my mind of everything that meant you're an adult. And obviously, you know me well enough to know that didn't pan out quite how I planned, and started an unintentional world tour at the age of 23. But yeah, I really tried, to be honest, the kind of playing the, I guess, corporate grad scheme game in London after uni. And then I just kind of realised it wasn't for me. And I guess maybe looking back at my answer, I should say it in 2 different ways. I thought I was an adult at 18, but I probably only really took control of my life at 22, 23 when I decided to leave the UK. And that's probably really when I was an adult, because I was actually, I guess, making my own decisions rather than just doing what I thought I should do.
So tell me a little bit more about kind of maybe when you were a bit younger, about kind of what was it that made you kind of just think that that's the route you had to take?
Well, I think, to be super clear, it was never like my parents who put pressure on me. I put it on myself, but I was in a pretty competitive school where like a B was bad. And I've always been pretty like type A, so I would get really upset if I didn't get like good grades and things like that. So I think it probably came from being like that for years and years and years, that I just saw like the ultimate was to go to a top 10 uni in the UK, and that was success. And then after that, getting a grad scheme at a top company was success. And I didn't consider what would make me happy either, to be honest. I just kind of think it came from this kind of, I guess, built-in program, probably to do with my surroundings as well, because a lot of my friends were the same. I think it was just kind of autopilot almost, that I was just in environments where it was expected that everyone would get good grades and go to XYZ unis. So that I wouldn't say there was much room for kind of diversity of like paths or thoughts or anything like that.
So what happened when you turned 23 then?
Yeah, good question. Many things. I think I'd tried kind of investment banking and hated it, because I hated sitting in a room with like 200 people, no windows, and nobody even knowing my name, because I've always loved people. So I found that quite soul destroying, to be honest. And also, I don't know if anyone listening has tried to get on like internships at banks, but it's literally like the Hunger Games. Like, everyone treats it like it's life or death. And I just used to find it like, and I understand I'm very privileged to be able to think like that, because a lot of people really need those jobs because of XYZ reasons. But I was just like, why are we all like killing each other to get approval from a random person? You know, I didn't make sense in my head. So there was that. And then I didn't love my living situation. I just didn't love being in London. and I'd ended up doing PA work for a couple of different companies, and I really enjoyed doing that. But I didn't like the current company I was in, and I just kind of had a bit of a brainwave and was like, hang on a second, I could literally be doing this anywhere. Like, why am I trying to make everything work in London when I felt like, to be honest, I was just hitting my head against a brick wall? So quite spontaneously, really, I just booked flights to Sydney and was just kind of like, I'd been there once before when I was travelling and really liked it, so I just booked the flights and then told my parents, I was like, oh, by the way, I've just quit my job and I'm leaving in 7 weeks. Yeah, which, I mean, they were very supportive, but the idea was, you know, I'll go for 6 months, figure out what I really want to do. I was also really into fitness at the time and had been doing a personal training qualification, so I really wanted to try, like, not being in an office and lots of different things. So I was kind of gave myself 6 months to figure that out, but actually 6 weeks into being in Sydney, I turned around and was like, I'm never coming back.
So what was it? Was it Sydney, or was it being away? What was it that made you think, actually, I want my life to be completely different to what it would be if I went back to the UK?
I think a combination of things. To be fair, at the same time, like, my family situation was changing in a not so positive way as well. So it helped me, I think, to be away. I really loved kind of the freedom I felt there and just the quality of life. Like, it is so much sunnier, and it made a massive difference. I was a really active person, still am, but I was super into like CrossFit and fitness, and that kind of whole world in Sydney is amazing. I just loved that in Australia they don't work as late. Like at 4:30 I used to get sent home, and so we'd go to the beach after work, and I was like, this is great. Like, yeah, and I just met lots of people doing lots of different things. So it wasn't even Sydney, because I knew I wouldn't be able to stay in Australia because of visas, because I ended up getting another PA job, which I loved, at Thomson Reuters. And I knew they wouldn't be able to keep me because of how the visas work over there, but I just knew I didn't want to go back to the UK and still wanted to try living in a few different places. So it was like a combination of those things, really. And yeah, I felt like a sense of freedom that I didn't feel in London.
So you're in Sydney. You know you can't stay there unless, you know, and you know the visa rules are complicated in a lot of countries, but you knew that probably wasn't an option for you doing the role you were doing.
Yeah.
We met when you lived in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
So tell me about that transition.
Well, basically what had happened is I'd been to Hong Kong when I was backpacking, and then I'd been to Singapore on the way to Australia, and I'd loved both. And I'd never really been to Asia, apart from I'd been to Bali, but I hadn't really explored Asia. And I had friends who had like moved out there as expats on grad schemes and were loving it. And I was sat in Sydney and knew I had to leave. And also, one of the downsides of Australia is it is just so far away from everyone. Like, it is hard, especially when you're pretty junior and you don't have like the funds to just go back and things like that. Yeah. So I basically decided, I was like, okay, I just need a job with a visa in either Hong Kong or Singapore. Don't really mind which. Just want to go try living there. Ended up getting a visa for a job that I hated in Singapore. But I was like, okay, I can move over there, try and get into one of the big corporates as a PA. So I was like aggressively trying to do that, and then got approached by HSBC. So they asked me to interview for a really, really cool PA job for the then Chief Marketing Officer, Trish, who I love. And I knew it was in Hong Kong, but I thought I should go to the interview because they might have a job in Singapore, because I'd kind of got settled by this point and I really didn't want to move again because it was like a third country move. And that's also expensive. And yeah, so I kind of went in with the mindset of like, let's just impress HSBC generally and I'm sure they'll find me something. But I met Trish and I just knew, it's really hard to explain, but I knew she'd changed my life and I knew that I needed to go and work for her. And she says the same. She's like, I met you. She'd been looking for a personal assistant for a while, and she was like, I knew that you were the right person. So then I ended up moving to Hong Kong, which I went on the...
So timescale for leaving Sydney to get into Hong Kong?
Oh, I was in Singapore for maybe 8 months.
Okay, so less
really
than a
quick.
year.
Yeah, really quick. But part of the kind of deal of me moving to Hong Kong was, and this was obviously pre-pandemic, Trish at the time used to travel extensively. And so the general agreement was you either need to be on my time zone or the Hong Kong time zone, which is the same as Singapore. So she was like, if I'm not there, you can go to Singapore as long as it's, you know, on your own accord, that's fine, and work from there. Then COVID hit. So I kind of got stuck in Hong Kong with no friends. I literally moved a few weeks before COVID. Yeah. So it was also cold because it was winter. So I wasn't happy about that. And yeah, it was quite challenging for a few months, but I ended up making really good friends, and now I've been there 5.5 years.
So tell me about leaving corporate life and going out on your own. So spoiler to all of our listeners, you now run your own company.
Yeah.
Tell me about that transition and how you came to the conclusion that, you know, you started out, you know, I should go to school, I should get A's, I should go to the university, I should join a grad scheme. You then went, right, I can work in a corporate, but doing something different, but in different places in the world, to I'm completely abandoning corporate life. I'm going to go and start my own business.
Yeah, I mean, it's it'll be a good movie one day. but I think, to be honest, I always had somewhat of like an entrepreneurial spirit. Even when I was working in these corporate jobs, I was always doing something on the side, whether it was like kind of the early days of fitness influencing, or I had a packaging company for a while, or I was always trying to do different things. And I think that probably comes from the fact my dad is an entrepreneur. So I was always aware. And I knew at some point I liked the idea of running my own company. But I think when I first joined HSBC, I saw the opportunities. So for a while, I was very much committed to like, I want to be a country CEO. That's what I used to say as a PA at HSBC, like somewhat driven. But I think for me, it really started to change when I basically realized the opportunities in terms of freedom you could have with your own company. So I was kind of doing some social media content marketing work for someone I actually met on Twitter, helping with his podcast, and really enjoyed it, and then got more involved with his company whilst I was still working at HSBC, and kind of could calculate in my head that actually I could probably build an agency, be better off financially, and then be able to be anywhere in the world, which really appealed. At the same time, I loved a lot of things about HSBC, and I'm always really careful not to bash like the corporate route, because I think it did so much for me in terms of like skill sets, learning how to network, different programs that I was able to take part in for well-being. All these things like have been so beneficial, and I wouldn't be where I am today without it. But I used to find it quite hard with like the red tape in terms of ideas and not being able to make things happen because there were so many different stakeholders or different layers you had to go through, and missing opportunities because by the time you'd got approvals, the opportunity had passed. So I struggled with that. So those were kind of the two things. And then the third thing was just kind of this idea that, and I'd seen loads of my colleagues who were way more senior, I think the longer you stay in the corporate world, as you get more settled and they help you with like schooling and all these different things, it's really hard to then remove yourself because they do so much for you. And I, at the time, I think I was maybe 26, 27, and I was kind of like, well, I can try. I don't have any responsibilities other than to keep myself alive. And what is the worst thing that can happen? I fail. So what would I do then? Well, go and get another PA job or try something else. So that's kind of how it all came about. I just felt like whilst I could, I should at least try.
So, and I think I think it's really interesting. And what you say about your dad being an entrepreneur, I think probably has an impact on that. Yeah. To kind of have that thought, which is actually, although I thought the corporate route was the route I should go because that's what my peers did, actually you'd seen someone else not do it. And I think we all struggle with, we cannot be what we cannot see, whereas you'd seen both
Yeah.
sides. And so actually don't seem to have had quite the fear that a lot of people would have had to do that. And I love your attitude of, what's the worst that can happen? You know, if it fails, I'll just go and get another job, right? And I'll have learned something.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about what you're doing now, because you've taken another quite pivot, haven't you?
I mean, I've just never been good at being someone who just focuses on one thing, and I've just learnt to accept it, because I think for a long time I beat myself up about it, because, you know, the narrative is like focus on one thing and do that really well, but it's just not the way my brain works. And you'll remember even at HSBC I was always doing lots of all the extra stuff like Britcham and whatever. Quickly, I will say is that actually my dad didn't want me to leave HSBC, which is super interesting.
Okay.
Yeah, I think because he'd obviously seen all the great bits of building your own company, but also seen the really hard stuff. And I think he didn't know that much about the corporate world, so he just saw it as like a safer option.
Yeah.
Whereas actually, you know, like with restructuring and things, that's not always the case. But now he's super proud. But then he was like, are you sure? Like,
do you really want to be doing this?
Yeah. What do I do now? So I call it my day job, but my main company is called the Leaf Group, and we've done many things over the past 2 years, which is part of the fun of building a company, is you have to pivot and change direction. But at the moment we build communities for brands, purpose-driven brands, which is awesome because I get to work with heaps of really inspiring founders, and we also help founders build their online profiles. So those are the two main things. There's a bit of project management in there too, but that is what I would call my day job, and I have a really great little team, and I can work pretty much anywhere unless I need to be on site with clients, which is great. I accidentally have a second company, which I have a wonderful co-founder for, which helps massively. We both did not intend to start a second company when we'd both started companies that very same year. But that is Ecomm Girls Club, which is a community for girls in e-commerce, social media, brand building, loads of entrepreneurs in there, international, across 11 markets. And we just help each other basically and run programs and online events and offline events and try and combat the loneliness that we both felt as women building businesses. And then it's not a company, but my third job is I'm also a presenter and MC, which also started at HSBC, partly thanks to Sam, and is something I just love doing, to be honest.
So I love that kind of portfolio of things that you do. As you say, you know, some people are good at one thing, but actually you like to be able to do different things. And I know a really important thing for you as well is being that kind of digital nomad and being able to travel whilst working and also working with lots of different people. A little story for the listeners. This podcast would not exist without Lucy's help.
You are welcome.
And thank you. I'm sure our listeners will thank you too. I got a great piece of advice probably about 2 or 3 years ago when I was thinking about setting up the podcast, which was you don't have to be good at everything. Focus on the things you're brilliant at. And setting up a podcast was definitely not my skill set. And I procrastinated about it for, oh my God, so long. And then when you set up your business, I was like, right, well, actually, I could just get Lucy to help me. And it made all the difference because it would not have got across the line otherwise. You connected me to the amazing Celeste, who I hope one day we'll also interview on here as well, who did all of the visuals for it. And you also trained up my niece Georgia, who does all of the editing and all of the social media for me. So anyone who's impressed by the social media that we do and my TikTok channel, I can take no credit. The credit definitely goes to Lucy and to Georgia. So, you know, I've kind of seen you go through this journey and to all the different things you do and the work. I love what you do with Ecomm Girls Club. I think one of the biggest, I came to, I think, your first London event for Ecomm Girls Club.
I wasn't even there. Do you remember?
No, you weren't. No. And what I loved about it was the kind of, the ethos was there was lots of women in the room who were actually competitors.
Oh, yeah.
In theory.
Yeah.
But actually all they wanted to do is help each other. And I think the first woman I met, I think she runs an amazing jewellery brand who I still follow today. And she was chatting to someone else who ran a jewellery brand. And the conversation they were having was, tell me what's really hard about your business. How can I help? And it was just, it blew my mind of kind of actually you can be a competitor but actually you're all in the same boat because they all wanted the community that you and Yasmin were kind of searching for. So I think
100%.
what you do is amazing, you know that, and you know, genuinely we wouldn't be here having this conversation recording if it wasn't for you helping.
But I wouldn't be here without you as well. So, like, because I work. Well, no, it's true though, because at HSBC I was in Sam's team for it was like, was it a year? I think it was about a year, but we were running.
And she was so unhappy she left.
Not yet, Sam. You asked why I left the corporate world. Sam Cooper Gray. That's the no, not at
That's
all.
so good. George is so good to make that a reel.
Yeah. Well, do you know what I always say to people when they're like, "What's the best thing that came out of working at HSBC?" I always say like female mentors, because I'd never really had in my family. There wasn't anyone who was kind of like in the corporate world, and Trish, my boss I mentioned, was one of them. Yourself, our good friend Liz, all really helped guide me and helped me kind of like grow up in my early 20s. So I always say that is absolutely the best thing that came from working at the company. And the other thing is, with Sam, I worked on a female entrepreneurship program called HSBC Raw, and that's definitely informed a lot of what we do at Ecomm Girls Club. So
Brilliant. Awesome.
full circle.
So yeah, absolutely full circle. So I'm going to take you back to that 18-year-old self now. What would she recognise in you?
Probably my drive. Like, I've always been very driven. Most people say that when they meet me. Some say unhinged. I prefer driven. And I've always been able to laugh at myself as well. Like, I like making people smile, which I think a lot of my clients also see, and you can attest to that as well. So I think those core things probably have always been with me, and kind of a determination to succeed. I've always kind of had a very like, you will figure this out attitude, and that is important when you're running a business, let me tell you. You know, when you're not having a good time or things are going wrong, I always just kind of recite to myself being like, but you know this is going to work out, because if no one's injured and no one's, you know, dying, like, it's fine. That's kind of what I tell myself. It's what I used to tell executives at HSBC as well, which didn't always go down well.
So what would she be blown away by?
I think the way I live my life now, for context, even I was thinking about this yesterday, like, be careful what you manifest is what I would say to people. Because I was very like, I want to travel the world with like clients and stuff, and now I'm like, oh my gosh, it's way too much. Like, I'm going to like Nigeria in September. Like, who would have thought? Like, crazy, you know? So I think 18-year-old me would be blown away that I'm flying all the time around the world, like meeting new people, making new friends. It's not always glamorous. There's always a downside to these things. But yeah, I don't think I would have been able to if you told me when I was 18 that I would be running 2 companies, being flown in to present sports events and things like that, I wouldn't believe you. Like, yeah.
So in your journey, what are the kind of rejections or failures that have really helped you to be able to do what you do today?
I mean, I think there's never been like one big one, but there's definitely been a lot of kind of, I would say, rejections for kind of roles or opportunities that have basically been just me needing to slow down, because I've gone after things so quickly. Like, I'm always thinking of the next thing, and I think a lot of it has been I've just not been ready or not been patient. I was the most impatient person. I still am, but I've worked on it, and or tried to. So I think actually most of the rejections I've had have been like opportunities I really wanted, and it's just I wasn't ready. And then when you get past it, you realise, oh, thank goodness that didn't happen, because I would have found it really hard. Or one that sticks out this year, which is more, I guess, the idea that just trust things are going to work out how they're meant to. I got offered my dream presenting job, my absolute dream presenting job, like vision board stuff, in earlier Q1 of the year, and it was like very close to getting it across the line, like a done deal. And then one day the company arranging it turned around and just said, we don't need that role anymore. And I was so sad. I was so sad because it was so close and would have been like a dream for me. However, a few weeks later, I got incredibly unwell and ended up hospitalised for a number of days. And I didn't realise at the time, to be honest, how sick I was. But afterwards realised I was very, very, very unwell and like life-threatening kind of stuff. And the event would have been about a week after I came out of hospital. And it would have felt so much worse to have to tell them I couldn't do it and give away that opportunity because I was sick, when I was already losing lots of things because of that incident, than it not be an option. So actually, it worked out better. So yeah, I trust things that they are going to work out. How, even if you're disappointed, normally something better comes along or the situation explains itself. So yeah, even failures and rejections, they've always kind of been like redirections, I guess.
I love that. Failures and rejection is actually redirection. Yeah, absolutely. So obviously there's lots of decisions you make that lead you to where you are, whether or not you realise or not. What's the best decision you've ever made?
Easy answer, moving to Australia when I was 23. I think I was 23. I need to fact check that, but to be honest, it seems like a long time ago. Yeah, that decision changed my life more than any other decision I've ever made, because it was just me by myself with like basically no support system on the other side of the world, and just had to make it work. And it's just informed how I live my life from then on, and kind of diverted me away from what I thought I wanted, which was, the fancy job in London and a flat and all those kind of things, which just wasn't me. So that's easily the biggest kind of decision that's had an impact.
We all get advice. I've probably given you a lot over the years. I don't know whether or not you've taken any of it.
I do. I always listen to you, Sam. That's why I still come to you.
Don't listen to me all the time. So
Like,
what's the best piece of advice you've been given that you chose not to listen to?
Oh, to slow down. I still don't listen. Like, and to the point where, like, me being in a hospital, it did actually make me listen, because most people I told assumed I was there because I'd overworked myself into that situation. So many people said to me, oh, like, even my business partner said to me, well, I'm assuming it's because you've been doing too much or working too hard. And it wasn't. But it just made me think, like, oh, wow, that's what people think I'm there for. So I need to adjust things.
Gosh, that's amazing. I didn't know that. I mean, I'll be honest, when you told me you'd been ill, it did cross my mind.
Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah.
So one of the things we've added into the podcast recently is getting our guests to set a challenge to the listeners. So if you were going to set a challenge to the listeners, what challenge would you set them?
I don't know whether it's a challenge, but it would be a habit, I guess. Okay. But I would challenge anyone to start journaling every day in the morning, especially if you're someone with a busy brain. Like, I always tell people, in my brain, it's like those monkeys with the like symbols, like, most of the time. And I just think, like, it's made such an impact for me in terms of just feeling calmer and feeling like I'm more in control of my day. Because I think with the different things going on, sometimes I feel like I'm just trying to keep my head above the water. But if I take some time just to write down anything in my mind, it doesn't always make sense. It just like clears my brain so that I can start the day. And yeah, it's my number one thing I recommend to people, and it's not for everyone, but even if it's one line, I find it just helps. So that would be my challenge, is to see if you can do it for 100 days. Okay, so like that, we like a bit of specificity. So try journaling for 100 days. HSBC. Okay. Alrighty. So I don't know how we've managed to get here, but we're at the last question. It's been so lovely talking to you today, and I think you're my youngest grown up. Although that feeling that you're not really a grown up is very common and relevant of age, we have discovered during the interviews on this podcast. Well, I was going to say, I almost didn't want to say it because I'm pretty sure everyone says it, because we all you never feel grown up, right? No, but I think, but the advice that people give off the back of it,
actually lots of people have said to me it's really useful and really resonates with them. So the final question, as ever, is what is the one thing you would put out of all of your lived experience? What is the one thing you would put in the guide?
Always do good work, because you never know when people are going to come back around. Yeah, that's always, I was taught that like pretty young, and I just think it's so true, because the world's actually a really small place. And even if I've been in situations where I haven't enjoyed my job or the company I've worked for, but I've always tried to do the best that I can, because you never know who's watching and you never know where opportunities might come from. Even for me, like several of my agency clients have come from HSBC, like people who used to work at HSBC who have come to me because they saw the work I did there. So I just think, even when it's really frustrating and you're not enjoying it, always do good work, because it won't serve you to do things like poorly, you know? Yeah.
Love it. Always do good work. Like, I don't think there's a more perfect way to end. So, Lucy, thank you for being interviewed today. I've really enjoyed it. And enjoy all of your businesses going forward into the future.
The chaos. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening.
Me.
Please like, follow, or subscribe to help us connect with more new listeners. Tune in next week to hear from Barbara Gottardi, her international journey, the loss of her father at an early age, and starting her first business in COVID.